Welcome to the Daily Agenda. Apologise for no video yesterday, as I had a number of calls come in from America, basically, with political activists there and also people that I'm planning podcasts with. And that went on for quite a few hours. However, we're back in business today. And today we're going to discuss the phenomena of debate with the centre right. Yes, very interesting that one. Is there a debate? That's the whole point. I'm sure there is, and we'll find some talking points, won't we? But we'll get on to the issue of should Steve Laws take on Tommy Robinson in a minute. First of all, I'm going to trouble you with some Yuletide gifts, all of which I created myself. And so the first one is Offended by me, and that's all about the battle for free speech and how you should behave in police custody and also in prison if you should end up there. Thoroughly interesting book, packed with humour, in truth. In fact, the first 4 chapters, whilst I was writing it, I struggled to keep a straight face, because why make a deadly serious subject just so tiresome and tearful, you know? Best to have some fun as well, isn't it? I'm sure you'll like that one. And then, of course, we have my first book, all in paperback, The Fanatics, which is, been a very good seller over the years, for 21 years now, since it was first published. And this is the latest edition with a new cover, and it's all about the rise and fall of the British National Party and nationalism in general, in truth. And it's gripping in many ways, but ultimately it's a warning from recent history of where things went wrong and how they should be put right, in truth. So that's that one. And then, of course, we have my second book, Unlawful Killing, about the death of the unlawful killing, more to the point, of Princess Diana. And no, it's not packed with lurid conspiraloon theories about some secret Sun Society across the continent of Europe conspiring to get rid of the princess. No, it's actually nothing like you would expect. And the ending, of course, the ending chapters are not like anything you'll ever read anywhere else. All thoroughly researched, years of research in actual fact. That's where I got my first ban. I was banned from the Diana inquest in London on the instructions of Lord Justice Baker. And yes, interesting. Apparently they took my press pass off me. Yeah, the banning's just never stopped ever since. Not that I actually care. Thoroughly good book, I think, I really enjoyed writing it. And then, of course, we have the genealogy book, which took many years to research and an awful lot of money to produce. In fact, I've still not recouped the amount of money I put into the book, because it was so costly, DNA tests, etc. And travelling all over the place, searching historical records and BMD. Yeah, that's was thoroughly exhausting book to produce. But I did it mainly for my father before he died, so that he could know what his ancestry was, and because he wanted to know. And I guess you could say it was my parting gift to him. And it's a very interesting book, but of course, highly controversial, very controversial. But that's me, isn't it? I just like controversy. I seem to court controversy wherever I go. So what? And then, of course, we have this year's Golden Wonder, as it were. Very good seller this year, Patriot Games. I mentioned it a couple of weeks ago. And they're all available in paperback from Amazon, no matter what country you're in. And they're also available for instant download, obviously, on Amazon Kindle. So, and there's other books as well. It's just I just don't have all of my books in stock at this moment in time. Otherwise, advertise them as well. But, and if you want a signed edition, then contact me through thedailyagenda.co.uk. Send me an email through the contact form. It's £15. I only do UK sales. I can't send them abroad because it's just not cost effective. For signed editions, it's £15, which includes post and packaging and insured tracked 24-hour delivery. So help yourself. Have fun. Great Yuletide presents for people who like to read. Read something completely different than what garbage that's produced by the mainstream media. So yes, should Steve Laws and Tommy Robinson get it on? Not in that respect, obviously, unless they're that way inclined and they really do want to get it on. That's not something I'd like to watch, quite frankly. I'm perfectly sure you wouldn't either. But should they get it on in the context of debate? Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Loads of people have asked me about it and said, can you produce a podcast talking about a debate between Steve Laws and Tommy Robinson? Well, to be honest with you, it's difficult to talk about it for very long, isn't it? Because in essence, it would be a replay of the interview with Steve Laws and Liam Tufts. And it's because the centre-right, so-called, actually the centre-left, don't really have any talking points other than what we saw rabbited by Liam Tufts, and all of their attack lines are borrowed from the far left. So, in truth, it would be a repetition of that. It's just two different actors, shall we say, on a slightly different stage, talking about pretty much the same topics. And providing Steve actually stuck to the script that he used with Liam Tufts and was more robust than he was. I see that's my main criticism about Steve Laws in that interview. I know it was just an interview. It wasn't a debate as such, full-blown debate. But in a debate of that nature with Robinson, he really does need to be far more robust and cutting and straight to the point. In other words, go for the jugular. Go for the jugular. Don't mess around. Just go straight for the G-spot, so to speak, and get it on, get it happening. And that's basically what I would do. But I wouldn't tell anyone how I would approach it because, eventually I might have to face that scenario. And so therefore I'm not going to give the enemy the heads up, am I? Absolutely not. See, Steve's weakest point, and if Tom is smart enough, and I'm sure he is, he's not entirely dumb. Most of his supporters are quite stupid. Because they support him, really. But look, if Tommy is smart, he'd be able to pin Steve Laws down on the sheer lack of detail on this 100% remigration policy. It's all very well using these pub sound bites to other nationalists who want to have this 100% remigration policy. I wrote a 95% white supermajority remigration policy because I don't believe a 100% remigration policy is tenable or feasible, nor do I believe there's any real public appetite for it. There may well come a time where, when there is a big shift in public opinion as the balkanization grows worse, where millions of people shift towards a 100% remigration policy. But, with the worsening of balkanization, that makes remigration even more difficult. So these are issues that have to be contended with. And Steve's weakest point is the sheer lack of detail. So Steve needs to go away and frankly, and he can just carry on the way he's doing it, doing his pub soundbite talks, etc. But without detail, he's just going to fall apart when he's put to the test. And it's not like I'm telling them, the opposition, how to nail Steve Laws. It's just the way I would tear him apart, quite frankly. I'd tear his arguments apart on his sheer lack of detail. Because there is no detail. And it's the same, with Britain First. I mean, people keep talking about, we should see Steve Laws go up against Paul Golding. But in truth, what would that achieve? So Golding apparently supports 90% white supermajority. But the document we were promised a week ago, i.e. that it's been promised for months in actual fact, but we were promised it would be published last Saturday, still hasn't materialised. I can't find it anywhere. If anyone has seen it, by all means, let me have sight of it. I'd love to read it. I want to analyse it and do a podcast about it. A feasibility study, quite frankly. But I'm just wondering why we haven't seen it. So, a debate on whether we should have 90% remigration without a supporting blueprint, or whether we should have 100% remigration without a supporting blueprint is going to achieve what? The fact that there's no supporting blueprint. Well, I've not seen the supporting blueprint for either of those policies. The only supporting blueprint that I've actually seen to underpin a remigration policy is the one that I wrote myself earlier this year, which is on the dailyagenda.co.uk. I can explain the mechanics of remigration and the process of actually undertaking it. So that's what I would like to see, and that's where Steve could fall down very badly against Tommy if Tommy played his cards right. Don't underestimate the enemy, never overestimate them, and never overestimate yourself and underestimate yourself. Just go in and get the job done, And as I said, Steve needs to up his game considerably by producing a detailed blueprint for his remigration policy. If he can produce one and it's credible and tenable, then he's going to be implacable. No one in the centre-right will be able to counter him. It's not me promoting Steve Laws. I've told you exactly what I think of Steve Laws, his strengths and his weaknesses. I'm not the fawning, grovelling, creeping type. I won't just sit here and say, this guy's absolutely wonderful, everybody should support him, and this is the reason why. That's not my nature. I won't do that, and I don't want people doing that with me either. It has to be a balance of the two. And I've always tried to be balanced and fair where it comes to Steve Laws, because I know the man has done some very good work. But what we need to see is that detailed blueprint to underpin that 100% remigration policy. We need to see exactly how it would happen. And of course, we need to see some costings. You see, my idea for mass remigration is that, in truth, the vast majority of these immigrants can afford to pay their own passage back to where they came from, and that's exactly what should happen. We're not going to pay it for them, and nor are there going to be any generous grants given to them either. They wanted to come here, they can pay to go back, and they can pay for the cost of their resettlement as well. Why should it be our financial cost? Why should we foot the bill, the burden of it? Absolutely not. We've been under far too much of a burden with these people. That's the whole point. Those in a position who can't afford to pay for the cost of remigration will be remigrated at our cost. And they'll be the first to go, in truth. Absolutely. So that's my idea on it. And you can read the rest of the policy that I wrote on thedailyagenda.co.uk. But yes, absolutely. Should Steve debate Tommy? Yeah, absolutely. But I personally don't think Tommy would go for it. And I'll tell you the reason why. Because he's done the assessment, no doubt, of how the interview with Steve, with Liam Tufts went down. And he will have seen just how much of a big boost in support that gave to nationalism. It's obvious in the comments section, isn't it? The vast majority of people supported Steve Laws, not Liam Tufts. Big downer for Liam Tufts, quite frankly. Big up for Steve Laws. And it could backfire in spectacular fashion, particularly if Steve closes that gap on his flank, which is the lack of a detailed blueprint. Before he goes into a debate with Tommy Robinson, he needs to have that detailed blueprint. Even if the enemy say this is not tenable, it's not feasible, it's not practical, that's their opinion. But as long as you've got the blueprint, then you've got something to show people, haven't you? That you've actually thought through this policy. That it isn't just pub talk and sound bites. Okay? We're sick and tired of patriotic sound bites because that's all we get from the so-called centre-right. It's patriotic sound bites, flag shagging, and strip all of that away and you're looking at just another centre-left faction who borrow far-left attack lines and use centre-left talking points in their so-called debates. So absolutely, if the centre-right, so-called, left-wing patriots, or the divnats, in fact, a guy I know on Twitter has now started calling them divnats, which is div and nat, or divvy nationalists, divnats. I find it quite entertaining in actual fact. I might start using it myself, actually, the divnats. So, yeah, absolutely, if the divnats want to have debates with us, no problem at all. I'm absolutely confident that we'll win 99.9% of those debates, But, this is my advice, this is my warning to people like Steve Laws is, if you've got a gap on your flank, close it quickly and do it with something solid. And he has got a really big gap on his flank, which if you look at it in strategic terms, can be opened up massively. It can be opened up massively. You see, that's where I would drive the full force of my attack against Steve Laws and break his entire defensive argument to pieces. And I could do it very easily. Very, very easily. And with great subtlety. I wouldn't have to be cruel or brutal about it, just very subtle. And that's why Steve needs to close that gap on his flanks. And if he watches this podcast, and I'm sure he has done from time to time, because obviously I've done podcasts about him, Steve, if you are listening, please close that gap on your flanks, because you're leaving yourself wide open to attack. A wholly unnecessary flanking manoeuvre, and somebody who's clever enough and smart enough to exploit that gap in your defensive armour will do so with ruthless precision, and they'll humiliate you very badly. So don't humiliate yourself very badly. Go away and write, a blueprint to underpin that 100% remigration policy. I won't slag it off. I can tell you that for a fact. I'll just tell you exactly what I think of it. I won't deride it and say nobody should support this. If I think it's tenable, I'll say it's tenable. If I don't think it's untenable, that's what I'll say. I can only be honest about it. But Steve really does need to get to grips with that, particularly before he goes into a debate with Tommy. Okay? And if he does do that, actually, I think he'll wipe the floor with Tommy quite badly, and Tommy will just have a massive tantrum and a sulk, etc. And isn't that really what we'd all like to see? I know it's what you all really want to see, isn't it? But I assure you, it's not going to happen unless Steve Laws closes that gap on his flank. Okay? Thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you again soon. Oh, and happy Yuletide to all you and yours. I'll sail.